want to welcome everybody out to the August WASDE release. You got Brooks and Sterling on with you. I'm actually tuning in by phone today without internet, so you don't get to see my ugly mug in front of you. But Sterling's going to take the place of me on camera. And we're kind of entering this is kind of the last of the growing season supply and demand estimates, at least growing season in the U.S. Sterling just said it pretty well. I like his analogy. The football season pretty much echoes the Brazilian crop year. And as football season starts, the Brazilian planters get started. And really, as a coincidence, I guess it's not a coincidence, but as football season comes to an end, at least the Super Bowl, Sterling, a lot of crop has really been harvested in Brazil. That's probably the beginning of February. So we're transitioning in this report. And we're transitioning away from the northern hemisphere's growing season and more to the south now. And if you read the virtual crop tour, I kind of coined this time of the year as no man's land. No more we waiting on the weather systems to come through and impact the crop. Exports, Sterling did a good job of analyzing our export situation, which is relatively quiet here with the exception of some soybean meal and soybeans leaving the country. But we're in a new time period right now, Sterling, and this WASDE report, what are going to be the key components in this WASDE report we need to look for today?
All right. First, corn ending stocks. The survey guess is about 2166. That is the average. That is actually exactly where my balance sheet came out at. Then that is a little bit of a cut down from 22. And how I got to those numbers was I shaved a little bit off of yields. Yields per acre at 175.68, down from 177.5. That accounts for all of the changes in the balance sheet. Soybeans at 262. Again, I'm right in the middle of the pack, right at the average guess here. And that came from me doing the same thing that everybody else did. I shaved a little bit off of yields. The USDA has adjusted yields on 18 of the last 20 WASDEs with a proclivity for cutting them. Now, they very often add those back in September. Featured difference this time, we got some much needed rain here in Nebraska and western Iowa right when the soybeans needed it. So how much they adjust that yield, we'll see. So those
Sterling,
are the
on corn, we had some private analysts come out, reputable private analysts earlier in the week, and took that corn down to the 173, 174 range. And to your point on beans, while the weather's been favorable, it looks like early planting took place. Even for me, it's a little bit tough to go out there on a limb and adjust bean yields. What do you think about those private analyst adjustments? I think it was 173.4 and 51 on beans. How do you think those fit in with what we'll see today?
Well, I think they're going to be aggressive for what we see today, taking it down to 173. I don't think the USDA is going to want to be that aggressive. We did pick up enough timely rains, and it depends where it is. We're going to have trouble in southern Minnesota. That's a problem. We maybe pick some of that back up in northeast Nebraska and northern Iowa. So you have that balancing out. We have a situation of too much water in the south. And then if you look along I-74 in Illinois, how is that going to perform? That's probably going to be the fulcrum here. But if I remember right, last year's yields were down 173-ish, a little bit south of that. Last year's crop was poorly fertilized. This year, it's not a problem. Is that enough to put a bushel an acre on nationally? Sure it is. By the same token, we've added a lot of acres, and that tends to naturally weigh on yields. So it's going to be a little bit mixed. The problem is not so much this yield number, it's this here production number. We added a bunch of acres, so that in turn, if we shave a little bit off of here, even if we shave, 100 million off of production, that still leaves us at 2066. And then we have this other number, the corn export number, 2100. The USDA can adjust this number on this report. The question is, are they going to? And are they going to adjust it down? Or are they going to say, well, look, we've got lower prices. Dare they adjust it up? That's kind of the thing. This is going to be the thing that's going to really be the issue. because this production north of 15 is going to keep us well supplied. This is going to be really the thing that drives it. We're not going to see any big changes in feed demand. Ethanol is where ethanol is, and that's not going to move. So it's really going to come down to what this export number begins to look like for corn. Soybeans, we took exports down last time, 1850. Can we put a little bit back in? Well, sure, you could put a little back in. This number right here is the only number that can really, I think, save corn. If we can see this number come down, soybean ending stocks, and that could come from exports, that could come from crushings, would be the two big things. That in turn can help at least keep more of a floor underneath the corn market.
As time goes on, I think you did a really good job of analyzing these things, and it's yield. So I should say stocks, yield, and then we might as well just say exports. And to your point, it may not necessarily be in corn. It may be some additional soybean exports that we're accounting for there to drive that carry out number down. And we talk about Brazil, and we don't want to overshadow this WASDE report because, in my mind, pre-harvest, we've got more information on our plate in the August WASDE report than we've had all the way through. We got more certainties here, and I think this is one of the key WASDEs that I look for. I think it's an important one because you got so many more knowns out there, Sterling, than we did 2 months ago.
Right. For corn, this is a big report. This is going to really shine a lot of light. For soybeans, that's next month. Because next month we'll have a much clearer picture on just how yields behave. And soybean conditions have improved a little bit. And, the modern soybean plant, as I've said many times, it's a marvel of modern engineering. That those soybeans are smarter than a lot of people. And they can, they get the moisture, they'll turn that production right back on. And that makes yields a little squishy. And we could push those yields back up. We're supposed to get some rain here Sunday night. We get another batch of nice timely rain through most of the corn belt. Those beans may be feeling pretty good.
It sure seems that way, at least from the farmers that I talk to across the country. I think that a lot of them will tell you maybe not a bumper crop on the corn side, but there's still a lot of optimism on soybeans. And a lot of that has to do with planting dates and these late rains. We really changed that drought map. Your daily email yesterday showed the 4-week change in the drought map. It's significant. And also, I thought you did a really good job with exports. And we talked about it right before we started this officially. But we did see a little optimism in corn exports this week. Can you tell the folks what we saw there?
We saw Mexico coming in and buying. That was the optimism, which is good. Mexico is a number one top customer, and we need them. Where I want to see corn exports kind of improve, and we've seen this with the soybeans, we're seeing more going into Europe, both in terms of meal and beans. If we can move a little bit more corn globally, that is something that will help us out. And maybe with Brazilian supplies being so dialed into China, and I've heard the words Argentinian drought. As far as I know, Argentina's been in a drought my whole life. That's all I ever hear is Argie's dry. So if we can fill in some holes with Argentina not being able to export maybe and not being as reliable and maybe not being such a great soybean crusher, maybe we can kind of work our way around the China problem a little bit. We're not going to be able to alleviate that lock, stock, and barrel, but maybe we can alleviate that. On the subject of China, China has been issuing a lot of very uncomfortable economic news of late. There's serious risk that a big property holder may actually default, and that could create a credit event, not only just in China, but globally. So there are, a lot of problems. There's unemployment problems. The Chinese government needs to address this. And that's something where if they can drive down food supplies or drive down food prices, that's something that can help, have external investment, can help improve their situation. So one way they can drive down food prices is to keep their hog herd nice and strong.
Sterling,
And
you
if they
said
could do that, we could move some stuff.
you mentioned about a year ago that supply and demand economics have a little bit less importance across the mainland China than they do in other places. And to your point, throughout history, the way to keep populations satisfied is to keep them well fed. And we saw this very example during COVID, at the start of COVID. It was not a coincidence that as China was building COVID hospitals rapidly, they were building swine facilities. And a better fed population is a quieter population and one that's a little bit more easy to live with. And to your point right now, I don't think we've got anything like COVID on the horizon, but you do hear a lot of poor economic news coming out of China right now.
Yeah, we have a lot of economic issues globally. We have some concerning market behaviors. The stock market is not behaving in a what I would call a good manner. I'm seeing things. I don't care, if someone comes out here and screams, "Oh, it's down 20%, it's a bear market." I'm interested in finding the bear market before it starts so I can avoid that 20% heater. And I am seeing, bad market behavior. I'm seeing some interest rate problems and some issues with the yield curve, which here sometime over the next couple weeks, probably after Labor Day. I have an extensive treatise that I've written about what the yield curve is and how inversions and how reversions back to normal work. And I'll try to make it as simple as I can for folks, but that is going to be a driving thing as interest rates are not done going up. And it's kind of complicated, and we'll save that for another day. But one thing that I want to note about the inflation numbers over the last 8 weeks, this is my own personal observations against my own household budget. I have noticed the price of everything has gone up. I mean, a
Very,
can of
very
Altoids got me for $3.50 last night. That was $1.99 2 months ago. I mean, just everything. And there is a distinct possibility that we could see a second wave of inflation come through. And we're seeing, some big wage hikes for UPS. The auto workers are threatening to go on strike. There are a lot of things over the next 3 months that could go heinously wrong. And if that happens, we could see a much higher dollar, and that could create some problems.
So Sterling, we've just got a couple of minutes here before we start off. I always like to put you on the spot, and I'm gonna test your rapid fire here. I'm gonna name a state, and just in general, we'll talk corn. Trend line yield, below, at, or above. You tell me, as you talk to farmers and you talk to businesses throughout the states, where you think they're going to land. I'll start off with my home state of Illinois. Are we at, above, or below trend line on corn in Illinois?
I think it's bifurcated. In the south, you're probably going to be little bit below. In the north, I think you may be along that 74 corridor up to the Wisconsin border. I think you might be a little better, maybe.
I'm gonna say definitely below. Time will tell, but it's definitely better than I thought it was going to be 30 days ago. How about Iowa? Where do you think Iowa's at, Sterling?
I think Iowa may be at or above.
Interesting, and I don't think
We've picked up rains in places we've needed it, and it showed up again. This harkens back to 2021. We got we were deficit moisture, but we got it when we needed it, and that can be good enough.
I would say at in Iowa, it definitely has improved, definitely exceeded my expectations, at least what I'm seeing farmers send me. Then let's move to your home state, Nebraska. What are your thoughts out there?
60 days ago, I would have said firmly below. Now I would say just below. At least for the eastern part of the state, the central part of the state may be at.
Yeah.
One state that I am worried about was one of my other former home states, not New York, but Minnesota. Southern end of Minnesota is really productive. They've got some good land over there, and there may very well be some disappointments there.
As we move east, Indiana and Ohio. I think Ohio is at or above, and I would say Indiana is at or slightly below. That June drought was tough on Indiana in a lot of places. It's not certainly not bad, and again, kind of the same story. Far better than I thought it would be, but I think maybe at to a little bit below. Kind of leaves the Dakotas up there. Mixed bag in the Dakotas. What are your thoughts there?
Well, looking at spring wheat conditions declining, that tells me that we probably have some deficits in water, and we're probably looking at to below for both the Dakotas.
We've got a participant in the virtual crop tour, Greg Janish, that farms in Clark County, South Dakota, and his spring wheat, it was pretty amazing. It didn't have a lot of growth on it. Very, very short. Thought maybe it would be even destroyed. Rains came along at just the right time, and he's going to be harvesting that the next couple of days. We'll have to follow the virtual crop tour in a couple of weeks to see how it turned out, but
We've
definitely
got
a
a
big
report
turnaround
out.
there as well. Let's hear it.
Okay, so for corn ending stocks, we came in at 2.202, a little bit higher than expectations, but a little bit lower than last time around. For soybean ending stocks, we came in at 245, well below expectations of 262. So that is a bullish number. The corn yield came in at 175.1. The soybean yield at 50.9 was below
Wow.
expectations.
Yeah.
So that's going to make next month really interesting. The market reaction is corn was initially 10 cents higher. It's now back up 2 cents. Soybeans spiked rather gloriously, and now they're down a penny and a half to 2 3/4. Again, they're not going to believe this report. This is a guess based on the bad weather, not on the weather that improved. Here's one for us.
Interesting.
Cotton ending stocks 310 down from 340. So that is that could be meaningful. The cotton market, we'll talk about that in a little bit. We'll go over wheat here first, but wheat ending stocks at 615. The street was looking for 6, not looking for any big changes there. And that is just about where we are at with that. Corn production, Brazil 129, soybeans 163. Oh, that is a big, big number. If we look here, soybean production, old crop 156, adding 7 million tons to the global balance sheet. Old crop Brazilian corn production at 135, looking new 129. I'm willing to wager that number gets bigger. And Argentina, well, not very good. Just leave it at that.
Right. Right. So a mixed bag all the way around. If you're bullish, bearish, you can find something that's in it for yourself. I think you summed it up best with the market still in a wait and see mode.
And
This
here,
is
one
Go ahead.
other number. Look where I'm pointing. Corn exports cut from 21 to 2050.
And, I think that there's a lot of folks that are in that direct market that would take a 2050 today if that's where things were going to be. So in other words, what I'm saying is I think we've got some private estimates out there that don't get released. People that sit on the front lines and actually trade that think that number could even be lower than 2050.
Yeah,
So
I have a lot of connections, particularly in Europe, in regards to those export numbers, and everyone we are all in agreement that that number can definitely shrink.
well, a little bit of disappointment. I know that there's a lot of folks that have the tail end of an old crop to market out there, Sterling, and we're kind of hoping that maybe, they've done really well on 90 to 95% of last year's crop, and there's always that remnant in the bin, and it wasn't sold or something put on basis contract or DP. Um, Time is quickly running out of the hourglass to the bottom half of it here in regards to old crop. This report today a little bit disappointing in that regard. What do you do if you've got some old crop bushels, not very many? Do you hold those through this August time period um, into harvest? Do you bite the bullet and get out of them?
Oh, one of my big concerns is the price of diesel fuel and energy prices in general. And if you have to move this stuff, I don't know that you're going to get any big improvements in the board going forward. I don't know. It maybe you might be able to wiggle a little bit of basis so it's a localized decision. But here's the deal. If diesel fuel continues to go up, and there's some particular risks here in that we are right at the start of hurricane season. The Strategic Petroleum Reserve normally holds 33 days of fuel. It's down to 16. If we get a hurricane in the Gulf, that will be a black swan event that could be a problem. And you could all of a sudden, the cost of moving the stuff may make up any little bit of difference that you get. So at this point, if you want to get rid of it, clean it up before you have any quality issues or things like that.
Well, a
Might
lot
as
of
well make
times,
room for the new stuff.
and a lot of times that's what I was getting ready to say. We think like farmers sometimes at this time of the year when we get old crop rather than business folks. And what I mean is we kind of get ourselves accustomed to, okay, we have to be out of old crop. The bins have to be empty. The grain has to be sold because new crop is starting. Not necessarily the case. I think the farmers of today are starting to recognize that maybe they do turn the physical into cash. There's a lot of ways to re-own this at certain times. And as we look at that time period, you and I have talked a lot about this. December, traditionally, 30-year history, not a great month for futures performing. South America has changed December and January a little bit for American farmers when it comes to volatility in the market. When do we set ourselves up? When is the beginning of that volatility? Is it November 1st? Is it the end of October? When will we start to see that come into the marketplace?
I would be ready and in place to start watching for it the middle of October. Have your
And
chips in place, be ready to go. And then we'll see how it plays out. Because suppose we have a Brazilian planting problem. Suppose it's too wet down there. That could be an issue. That's something that could spark some volatility. That is also about the only thing that I could see that could spark some bullish volatility. Or if we
and
see
when you take a look at things, it's likely that happens. Whether or not the end product is below average or above average, the uncertainty is what should spark that. I think we'd be blown away if we saw Brazil and Argentina acreage at where it's at today. I think in translation, it's around 110 million acres. You can correct me on that, Sterling. I haven't done the math for a while, but close to that. But what's pretty amazing is combine that with U.S. acreage. It's a mountain of beans. What's even more amazing than that is the fact that we are using that mountain. I mean,
yep,
we are eliminating that down to where carryouts are extremely low. You and I talk about these carryouts in the 200s. And doesn't that just blow your mind that we've become a market that at a 6% stocks to use ratio, we're comfortable? And at 3%, we're uncomfortable. If you'd have thrown those numbers out 20 years ago, 6% would have skyrocketed the market.
well, here,
It's
let's think
amazing
back
how we've adapted.
10 years. Let's think back 10 years in Brazil. Your production was what, about 100, 110? Now they're calling for 163 next year.
Yeah.
That's how much soybeans that we have absorbed and that we are consuming. And let's not forget about that biodiesel situation here in the U.S. and our increased crushing capacity. That's something that, again, that's going to keep the need for the soybeans. The soybeans are going to become the global driver. Is King Corn finally advocating to the soybeans here? I mean, it's a process, but I think we're getting closer to that, to the end of that process than we are to the middle of it.
Well, Sterling, I'm going to leave it with you to finish things up. I appreciate everybody staying on. I'll let you kind of take them away, answer any questions that might be out there.
Oh, absolutely. As far as here, we'll take a quick snapshot of the market here and take a look, and we'll go over where everything is real quick. And so, as we can see here, corn's up a quarter cent. It's right back about to where it was. Previously. One number that stands out here, your life contract high, 701 and 679. We're miles and miles away from that. So, churning about, not seeing a lot of big market movement. The wheat market really did not have a big reaction either. We were down about 7 coming in. So again, the market has absorbed this report very, very well. A couple other caveats right here. This number right here, crude oil 83.50, diesel 313.79, the unleaded numbers. This is something that we need to be concerned about. The other one down here are these interest rate numbers as those are moving up. So basically the report was pretty close to actually as expected with a little bit of bullishness towards the soybeans. We did actually cut soybean exports a little bit. We cut corn exports a little bit, and the pretty much expected yield cuts in corn. Bit of a surprise in soybeans, but again, next month is going to matter more than what we're really seeing now. So, Ashley, did we have any questions?
No, I do not see any questions in the chat.
Well, in lieu of that, this is about where we're at, and I think it's a Friday afternoon in the middle of August, and things do tend to get a little bit quiet. So, with that being the case, I'd like to wish everybody a great weekend, and thank you for joining us.